As Nigeria approaches the 2027 general elections, the need for comprehensive electoral reforms has never been more pressing. The country's electoral process has never been marred by controversies, manipulation, and violence, casting a shadow over its democratic credentials. A follow-up to the Electoral Act Amendment 2027 election program, join us as we examine the critical priority areas that requires urgent attention to ensure free, fair, and credible elections. We'll be discussing the proposals and recommendations from stakeholders and what are the critical reforms needed to restore public trust in the electoral process. Thanks for joining us on Nigeria Today. I am Eucharia Clinton. Now with me in the studio for this discussion is Austin Aigbe. He's a regional advocacy officer and ECOWAS liaison lead. Also West Africa Democracy Solidarity Network, WADEMOS. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much.
Nigeria.
It's an honor.
Joining us via Zoom is Ezenwa Nwagu. He's Executive Director, Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center. Okay, Ezenwa is here to join us, but also joining us via Zoom for the discussion is Agyampe Onyema, Program Manager, Elections and Civic Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, PLAC. It's a pleasure to have you on Nigeria Today, Agyampe.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, we just go straight into the, the conversation. Quite a lot of, stakeholders, political analysts have called for this reform of the electoral law. Top among the recommendations, if I would recall, some experts say the independence of the electoral umpire, the autonomy and the funding and all of that. So I want to hear your take on, some of these issues. Agyampe.
Okay, so I'll just go right ahead on the independence of INEC, as you've pointed out. I think this particular issue has been a long-standing recommendation from several electoral reform body committees and panels. Also, a lot of election observer reports have always spoken about the independence of INEC, and many stakeholders see this as being critical, that the appointment of the chairman, national commissioners, and resident electoral commissioners of INEC are actually done in a fair and transparent manner. Also, there's also the issue of choosing from people who are neutral and non-partisan. At this time, a lot of people have also said that while names are submitted to the National Assembly, there should be a fair and open manner in which, the nominees are actually chosen. And if people, if people have been petitioned to say that there is some form of partisanship, or people have some sort of petition against them, they should be heard, and things like that. But many stakeholders at this time actually want that some of these recommendations are taken forward.
Much Agyampe for that opening remark. Now, Austin, still talking about the Independent National Electoral Commission. How can it be made more, independent, autonomous, so as to have to ensure free and fair elections?
Okay, thank you very much. You see, as Agyampe just stated, you see, in a football match, the referee is not supposed to be appointed by either of the players. So in this game that is called elections, one player, because that player is in government, appoints the referee. And that automatically creates some level of integrity question. The current chair tenure will end before the end of this year, in fact, actually like a month and a few days after 1 month, something like that. And definitely, the appointment, the replacement will have to be done by the current president. Even though the Constitution provides for some form of accountability measure, what they call the transparency process. It's required that the president will to nominate a candidate on the advice of the Council of State. Advice. Not that the Council of State will have any input on it. Advice. It will advise and seek their advice, appoint, get a nominee, send it to the National Assembly. National Assembly then synchronize that individual, critique, get possibly, that's what Agape is saying. What many people are saying, let citizens seek petition, seek views from people, so that whoever is going to be appointed does meet the needs of people. But the question is, whoever will be appointed is still the president that is appointed the individual. And that is why from some form of reform that has come up is that create a fair playing, a level playing field where this person that will be coming as INEC chair or commissioners or national commissioners or recs, let them go through a process of selection that required them applying for the job. It's a job to be done. That job, when that process go through, that individual is likely not going to be seen to be appointed. Again, when the appointment is done, the first perception, again, perception is reality, whether they like it or not. The first perception is that this individual that has been appointed by this Mr. President will play the game of the president. Whether he does that or not, people are going to be thinking he will do it, he will do it. And that's the real challenge with our electoral system. Today, the integrity of INEC, it's shaking. And it has always been in that status.
So what can we do? Because we're talking about solutions.
So for now, what the president, let me address Mr. President. What the president can do is to listen to Nigerians. There have been a lot of agitation about what an INEC chairman should do, who an INEC chairman should be. An INEC chairman does not need to be a professor, doesn't need to be a chief judge. An INEC chairman should be a Nigerian. Possibly there are criteria that has come up. One, this person must know about the electoral system. It's not just because he's a professor you appoint, then he has about a year to learn. No, this person must have some level of integrity. He must not be partisan. In fact, the Constitution actually said that the person must not be partisan. He must never have been a party member. But, get the person, get at least 3 names, not just one. Get 3 names, throw it out, let there be interrogation, National Assembly, opening up the debate. Call them for questioning. Let citizens submit proposal to say this candidate is this. He has contested election in 5 years ago, because that happened. There was a rec who contested election before. And when you contest election before, whether you like it or not, that alliance or the allegiance is still there. When that happened, then the citizens interrogating that person, because for the now, we cannot change the constitution overnight. But the president can truly listen to Nigerians and make the process of selecting a replacement for Professor Yakubu be a process that actually brought in citizens' participation. Otherwise, that individual will be seen as President Tinubu's appointees.
Oh, okay. Now, Agyampe, having heard that part of the the electoral reform, it calls for the unbundling of INEC. Talks about the appointment of electoral officers. I don't know what would be your perception about this unbundling. What are the areas that should be taken into consideration when this is being done?
Okay, so 2 key areas for us. And those critical reforms that you put on the screen are from a report we just launched, looking at 5 electoral reform committees, as well as several election observer reports from 2010. We sort of laid out all the recommendations. And as you can see, number 2 there is the unbundling of INEC to establish a political party registration and regulation commission. This is something that has been reoccurring. It's something that we think will also help the work of INEC. The other is establishing an electoral offenses commission. These are 2 critical areas that we think will help INEC to focus on doing its core mandates of conducting elections and everything related to elections. These 2 will make it clear that political parties register and be supervised by a separate commission. And then the Electoral Offences Commission as well can focus on, electoral offences arising from several elections.
Now, having had that, Austin, Some time ago, some stakeholders, I'll put it out, a civil society group, put forward some of these recommendations, which of course includes what we have there on the screen. It's a timely amendment of the Electoral Act to allow for electronic transmission of results, early voting, diaspora and in-prison voting, establishment of the Electoral Offences Commission, which of course have been mentioned, and the Political Party Regulatory Commission that has been mentioned, strengthening INEC's independence, stakeholder communication and internal capacity, greater inclusion of women, youth and persons with disability in the electoral process, stronger legal and operational frameworks of to curb vote buying, disinformation and cyber threats. And the sixth one was improve electoral security coordination, especially in conflict-prone areas. I don't know what you have to, say about some of these recommendations.
So first, this looked more like the EU recommendation that a meeting they had with INEC recently. So these are key components of strengthening electoral system. For instance, if you look at the 2023 election, one of the basic challenge was in the collation of results, the collation process. I mean, INEC has said that there will be a platform called IREF, the result viewing portal, and that results will be uploaded there from EC8A, from polling unit will be uploaded there, and citizens have a right to go up there and then view. That was not the first time INEC was doing that. They had done that in Ekiti, they had done that in Osun election, they had done that previous elections. 2023 elections, general election, presidential election specifically, was just to continue to do what they were doing. And suddenly, that didn't happen. Then the integrity of INEC then became faced a huge attack. In the following election, after that presidential election, in the following election, INEC went on air, and INEC went on to declare results from Adamawa election following the IRF result. Collation of results were then done on the IRF. Then when we had issues with the declaration of a gubernatorial candidate in Adamawa, INEC went back to put their result out, which means the IRF was an important platform for the election. It is not a place where the results are declared. It is a place for accountability. Before the IRF, there's what INEC used to call Form 60E. That Form 60 is a poster where you write the results at that polling unit and you stick it at the polling unit where the election are taking place. Citizens go there, view the results, snap the results, but because people will go there and then pull those down and then they transfer that sheet online. That was simply what happened. But then see what eventually happened. So those recommendations, key to this recommendation is even the use of PVC. INEC has also submitted. There will be no need to continue to waste resources of Nigerians with the printing of permanent voters card. What Nigerians need, you could print out your PVC online, take it to the polling unit. What that BVAS need is your VIN number and your fingerprint to pull up your data and you vote.
Thank you, Austin. We have Ezenwa Nwagu now with us, the Executive Director, Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PACA. You're welcome to Nigeria today, Ezenwa.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Now, we're talking about, of course, the reform, which is on everybody's lips, stakeholders, political analysts. It's like we lost Ezenwa again. Okay. Ezenwa, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, good. What is on everyone's list is the reform for the electoral reform bill that's on now. Every stakeholder was. So I want you to, we've talked about some of the areas that attention should be paid. So I want you to tell us some from your own perspective. What are some of these areas that you think urgent attention should be paid if we are to have credible and free, fair election come 2027?
Well, I broadly agree with colleagues who have spoken earlier. I think that for the appointment of INEC chairman and resident electoral commissioner, I think what needs to happen now will be to play a lot of more emphasis on the transparency of the institutions that are involved in the appointment. Not much can be done about taking that responsibility away from the president, but the president owes it to the Nigerian people to put out what the secret police said about an appointee or a nominee. if a nominee, if the secret police had written the report, that report can be made public so that we can see the suitability or otherwise of a candidate. And there is nothing that should make the opacity about the Council of State and the advice should also be front-loaded to the public so that we can see what quality of advice comes from that oversight mechanism. And then thirdly is the National Assembly that has much bigger role. If it derelicts that responsibility, then there is nothing much that can happen. And why I say so is that it has different committees. It has the Committee on Intelligence, it has the Committee on Electoral Matters, it has the Committee on fraud and the rest of them. And in the mix of all of this, they are able to determine whether candidates are. So I'm not very excited about other extraneous institutions or ad hocism that is being introduced into it. I think that what needs to happen is the transparency of these institutions. And like Agyampe said, what may be very important would be to say that citizens who have reservation about a particular nominee should be able to be allowed not just to write petitions, but to physically defend their petitions in the National Assembly in a way that guarantees openness and transparency and security for those who would want to do so. Because as we speak now, the consequence of an intervention that someone in civil society did, it just was thrown out of court not just long ago when an individual had to go through the cybercrime route to be able to see whether he can implicate members of civil society who came against a particular nominee. So for me, it's the integrity of the oversight institutions and how much they are able to discharge that responsibility. The second and most important for me will be to continue to work to expand the democratic space. I think that we need to be able to do more in terms of the gender, conversation that is going on, whether they are reserve bills, whether they are other equal opportunity bills that are in the National Assembly should be given consideration. I think also this whole issue around the Electoral Offences Commission, the Political Party Registration Council and the rest of them, we need to do a lot more thinking around it. I think that the current regulations that have not been exhausted in terms of if people obey those conditions and regulations that have been put forward in terms of registration of new parties or discipline of political parties, it may make a lot more meaning. But I'm just not very excited about creating new institutions. I think we've overflogged the Electoral Offences Commission. I think the police have a responsibility to implement offense. I mean, what do they say now? The police has a bigger, wider role to take on any offenses, whether they are electoral or they are domestic. So I think we should be very careful because we want to solve a problem, we create many more. And then later we want to see how we can go back. Orasanye report is about closing down other institutions that have been created because of over-bloated nature of government and high cost of governance. I think that there is a lot more thinking that needs to go into this, right?
Okay, before I let you go, Ezenwa, I also want you to tell us how important is it to our democratic growth that people, that Nigerians have confidence. Their confidence is kind of restored in our electoral process.
No, when we talk about confidence, we also need to be nuanced. The confidence is a difficult thing because there are those who have confidence in the system. There are those who don't have. And when you have a non-statistical engagement like that, you have to. So the point is to put the eye on the ball. What are those processes that need to be strengthened to continue to improve on what has already been established, what is already working. There are things that are working, there are things that needs to be improved upon. But when you have conversations around confidence, restoring confidence or improving confidence, you have to be clear who is talking, because the nature of politics, the nature of elections draws a lot into bipartisanism. And that means that you have to be very nuanced in understanding when people talk about restoring confidence. You have to listen carefully to find out from which prism that person is talking. Because election is a whole gamut, it's a whole process. There are things that have worked well, there are things that haven't worked well. We need to separate them, talk about those that have worked well, that needs improvement, and those that we even need to completely, eradicate and do away with, which perhaps is part of the issues. And then lastly for me is the issue of logistics. We need to pay a lot of attention of logistics and procurement. And I think that is what we need to deal with very quickly.
Okay, back to you. I agree. It's like we can't. Is Agape with us? So Austin, Ezenwa has mentioned that there are things that are working for us, and there are things that have not worked. Do away with things that are not working. So I don't know if you can highlight some of these things that are working for us and how we can improve on things that are not working for us.
Earlier I talked about perception, and what Ezenwa talked about when you talk about integrity. And the EU met with INEC, and INEC said, part of their conversation, is that if you don't deal with SYZ, you are going to have the same thing in 2027, which means there's a general consensus that a lot of things, particularly with the way, of course, the systemic issue that went on, where people actually talked about is a collation of results, announcement of results, and our result, if result doesn't have integrity, it will definitely go back to the citizens and you're going to get a feedback. Whether it's going to be 20 people, 30 people, from what Ezenwa talked about statistically, maybe a different one. But arguably, if you check the 142 proposal that INEC has worked on, key is electronic, is resource transmission, is collation of results. Okay. It is, of course, PVC. There are administrative proposals. And just to quickly say that for political party and not to bloat the agency, all these agencies are already in INEC, on Bondo INEC. We are not creating new agency. We are on bonding INEC. The same money still goes there, but it's on Bondo.
Thank you very much, Austin. So, Agyampe, we want to have your closing remark on this issue of, electoral reforms.
So my closing remarks would be that we still need to improve several aspects of our elections. And whether we like it or not, public perception or trust and confidence in our elections are not very high. And I'm going to say this looking at off-cycle elections. Last year, we were at the Ondo State's governorship elections in 2024. And we could see a very low turnout of people coming for the elections. However, you see a rush for people going to go and get their PVCs, show interest in voting, but on that day do not turn out. Now, we need to investigate these things. There could be something different, but it could also mean that people do not have confidence in our elections. And we head to Anambra State in November. We are hoping that there will be a huge difference from 2021, where it recorded about 10% of voter turnout. And we hope that it will be improved. I just went to Oka not too long ago, and I can say that the environment, the political environment, seemed very stable. And I think the state has improved so much from the last time I was there to observe elections. And I'm hoping that
for that, Agyampe Onyema there, the Program Manager, Elections and Civics Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, PLAC. Thank you so much for coming on the program. I'm sorry, I just had to cut you there because, time is not our friend right now. Thank you so much. And of course, here in the studio, I had Austin Aigbe, is a regional advocacy officer, and ECOWAS is in lead, West Africa Democracy Solidarity Network, Wadamos. Thank you so much for coming on the program. And also via Zoom, we had Ezenwa Nwagu, Executive Director, Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PARCA. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
And that's it on the program Nigeria Today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Eucharia Clinton. Have a wonderful weekend.